There are growing questions about a pass of Obamacare that Congress is getting after subsidies were granted for lawmakers and some of their staff members. And my next guest says he's got a lot of questions, too. Republican Senator David Vitter out of Louisiana. Sir, good morning to you.
Good morning, Bill. Good to be with you.
And you as well. We've been on this story for about 2 weeks. What's your take on it?
Well, sadly, this is exactly what America hates most about Washington. Washington passes laws and then exempts itself. This is the same thing all over again. You know, Obamacare is broken. It's a big problem. Great. Washington fixes it for Washington. Wait a minute. What about fixing it for America? And in the meantime, treating Washington, every member of Congress, all staff, the president, the vice president, all of their appointees, exactly the same as middle America?
I think it's a great question. And you wrote letters to the president. You've written letters to what? Pelosi and Reid and Boehner and McConnell.
Right.
Part of your letter says this on screen for our viewers. This is just one sentence now.
Sure.
This bailout simply has been pulled out of thin air under intense and sadly bipartisan political pressure. You're a Republican. Are you saying Democrats and Republicans were on board the subsidy cut?
Some of them, absolutely. There was intense lobbying behind the scenes, Bill, and sadly, I guarantee you it was bipartisan. There were plenty of establishment Republicans pushing for this bailout, essentially, this special exemption for Congress.
What can you do? Can you change it?
What I can do is demand that we legislatively repeal it. And that's exactly what I'm going to do, and I'm going to fight for a vote and get a vote when we go back into session after Labor Day.
You know, you wonder...
Now, Bill, I can't guarantee what the result of that vote will be.
We're going to watch it, but you wonder if the law was so good in the first place, why do members of Congress who debated it, who voted on it, who passed the legislation, why do you need a subsidy in the first place?
Well, exactly, and it underscores all of the problems that have been happening with Obamacare. And as one of my colleagues said, Obamacare and its implementation is a train wreck. What's interesting about that quote is it's not from a fellow conservative. It's from Max Baucus, the Democratic chair of the Finance Committee that helped draft and pass Obamacare.
Yeah, but I'm back to the point. I mean, people in Congress are worried about a brain drain. But again, if the law was so good, if it was so sufficient, why would people be running away from
America and for small business? Let's fix all of that, not just take care of Washington.
Here's another point from your letter. You talk about Congress treating itself like a higher select ruling class. Is that what you see?
That's what I see here, and unfortunately, that's what we see all too often. This is a recurring theme. You know, back in 1994 in the contract with America, one of the first planks was that every law and rule passed by Congress should apply to Congress as much and in the same way as it applies to middle America. Let's get back to that fundamental rule.
Right, but the reason why people need subsidies is because they'll be spending how many more dollars in order to maintain the same level of insurance that they have now under Obamacare.
Correct. And that's a much more widespread problem than Congress. That's a problem for America that we need to fix for America.
Will you get the votes to fight back on this?
I don't know. It's going to be tough, but I think it's important to get a vote so that every member of the Senate, and hopefully there'll be a vote in the House, every member of the House gets to stand either with Washington or with the American people.
But once it's exposed, I mean, you got to think people will come to their senses. It just looks bad.
I would hope
it's
so, and that's why getting the vote is so important.
All right, sir, thank you for your time today. David Vitter's out of Louisiana today. And when you folks come back to Washington in September, we'll be watching this, okay?
Great.
And we'll see if you stick to your word as well, sir. David Vitter,
absolutely.
Senator, thank you for your time.